The day Mark Wahlberg walked off live TV and why everybody's still talking about it when really don't was meant to be just another celebrity interview. One more smooth appearance on The View, a daytime chat show famous more for coffee table gossip and low-key political spats than fiery confrontation. But this time, things were different, because what began as an interview about a poignant film became one of the most widely discussed walk-offs in television history. And at the eye of it all, Mark Wahlberg, Hollywood's redeemed bad boy turned devout Christian, family man, and now the man who stood up during the middle of an interview and told us, "You don't talk to me like that." This is the tale of how it all got away from us and why it set the whole internet ablaze. When Mark Wahlberg arrived at the View Studios that morning, everything seemed normal. He was there to promote a film that was deeply personal to him, a faith-based drama centered on redemption, values, and the power of second chances. It was a role that reflected his own transformation, from a violent youth surrounded by arrests to a man of faith, of family, and of discipline. Wahlberg wasn't acting in this movie, he was living it. The crowd cheered when he arrived on set. The host smiled. Even Joy Behar, with her sarcasm and tough guy sentiments, welcomed him warmly at first. The early part of the interview went smoothly. Mark talked about the movie, the message, and how his faith has influenced the man that he is today. Then, it changed. Joy leaned in. Her voice became sharp, and the atmosphere went cold. "Mark, do you really believe Hollywood needs more religion currently?" The question was cutting, the undertone clear. Mark didn't waver. "Definitely," he replied. "More values, more religion, and less of the anarchy that is being made acceptable." Joy folded her arms. Not everybody wishes to be sermonized during a film. That was when things started to fissure. What had been merely an interview now became a live debate on religion, morality, and who has the right to talk about either. Mark replied firmly, "There's nothing bad about standing up for what you believe in, even if it makes people uncomfortable." The crowd gasped. The tension around the table increased. Even the other co-hosts were uncomfortable. This was not going to be an easy segment anymore. Joy pushed further, digging into Mark's checkered past. "Values, Mark? You speak of values, but everyone remembers the old you. Assault charges, hate crimes, jail time. Are you truly the man who should be giving Hollywood lectures?" Mark's face set. "I made mistakes. I paid the price. I changed," he said softly but tightly. "Bringing up my past to defame what I am today, that is not journalism. That is character assassination." But Joy was not finished. Smirking, she reclined and uttered the line that would ignite a national furor. "Perhaps you should limit your punch throws to the big screen and let the professionals preach." That's when the atmosphere imploded. No longer smiles, no longer patience, no longer restraint. Mark Wahlberg leaned in and spoke the sentence that would play a million times online. "You don't speak to me like that. I'm here to sell a movie, not be disrespected." Mark rose from his chair. Slowly, intentionally, he yanked his mic away, smiled at the other co-hosts, and strode off the air. Live during broadcast, leaving Joy Behar at a loss for words and the studio in shock. The program jumped directly to commercial. Producers rushed to intervene behind the scenes. No one, not even the veteran hosts of The View, had ever witnessed anything remotely similar. And with the video going viral on social media, the internet went wild. In a matter of minutes, Twitter, X, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram were inundated with videos of the incident. Mark Wahlberg walks out, Wahlberg versus Behar, and The View meltdown were trending globally. Viewers weren't just seeing it, they were taking sides. He stood his ground. They attempted to bait him. He remained calm and left. This is what integrity is all about. She asked tough questions. He couldn't take being challenged. This is what talk shows are for. Debate. Even celebrities had their say. Chris Pratt, Denzel Washington, Jamie Lee Curtis all expressed solidarity with Mark's choice to exit a space where his faith was being made fun of. But one thing was certain. This was no longer a celebrity thing. It was a cultural thing. That night, The View issued a short statement. We appreciate open discussion. We thank Mark for coming on. Mark was blunt on Instagram, though. I believe in respectful discourse. I don't believe in being ambushed for having convictions. Joy on the next day's show refused to apologize. We've had tough guests before. Mark clearly wasn't in the mood for pushback. But the public wasn't satisfied with neutrality. A petition calling for Joy to apologize gathered over 1 million signatures in under 48 hours. YouTubers posted reaction videos dissecting every frame. Even politicians and pastors used the clip in sermons and speeches. And the public started asking the larger questions. Are we permitted to grow beyond our history? Can one speak their faith out loud and be safe from attack? Has the talk show gone from agitating to cornering? Mark Wahlberg has remained largely quiet since the walk-off, preferring to concentrate on his movie and allow the moment to speak for itself. But sources report that his representatives already have turned down a number of high-profile interviews. Fear of further media ambushes. The View, its ratings spiked, but so did the criticism. Some insiders fear that A-list stars will now avoid the show, fearing a repeat of what happened to Wahlberg. And as for Joy, her reputation has always included sharp wit and no-filter comments. But this time, many believe she crossed the line from tough to toxic. No matter what side you're on, everyone agrees. This moment in television history, because it wasn't just about an actor, a host, or a talk show. It was about something deeper. The struggle between redemption and ridicule, the right to change and the right to be heard. The conflict of conviction versus cynicism. Mark Wahlberg didn't yell. He didn't insult. He didn't even fight back. He simply got up, replied, "You don't speak to me that way," and walked out. And in doing so, he might have spoken louder than any words ever could. If you've ever been judged for who you used to be, if you've ever been attacked for what you believe, if you've ever been pushed to your breaking point but decided peace over destruction, then perhaps you recognize a little bit of yourself in Mark Wahlberg that day. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. You don't talk to me like that. The hostility unleashed. It began with a spark but escalated into a conflagration. What had begun as a light-hearted celebrity sighting soon devolved into one of the most stirring live moments in recent TV history. Actor and producer Mark Wahlberg, adored by millions as the tough guy in blockbuster action movies and as a man who has been well documented to change his life, was invited onto ABC's The View. The mission? Plug his next faith-based film, a personal project that merges his faith in his Hollywood life. But what transpired on that set was not promotion, it was confrontation. As cameras rolled and audiences watched anticipating a relaxed conversation, few could have guessed the verbal clash that was about to ensue between Wahlberg and veteran View co-host Joy Behar, famous for her quick wit, outspoken political opinions, and predisposition to challenge guests without fear. It was evident from the moment Mark took to the stage that tension simmered just below the surface. As the studio audience greeted him with applause, those who were watching carefully could already feel an unease in the atmosphere. His posture was relaxed but tense. Joy's smile was formal but chilly. First, everything was in order. Sunny Hostin greeted Mark with a question regarding his character in the movie, what inspired him to do it, and how it deviated from his typical action-packed resume. Mark replied thoughtfully, discussing his spiritual journey, how life loss and family expansion realigned his priorities, and how this film was a message of hope in chaotic times. Then came the moment everything changed. Joy, shuffling through her notes, leaned in with a smile and asked, "Mark, do you seriously believe Hollywood needs more religion at present? I mean, aren't we already facing enough division?" The question landed like a bomb. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, loaded with sarcasm, the kind that could be brushed off if it weren't for what came next. Mark blinked slowly. He took a pause, clearly collecting himself. "Absolutely," he said, calm but firm. "We need more movies that stand for something, for values, for faith, for healing, not only entertainment that distracts us, but stories that inspire people." Joy wasn't impressed. "But not all people share your views. Doesn't this sort of message exclude people who want to watch a movie without being preached to? Mark's gaze grew stern. That's your reading of things. I believe people are sick of the din and hungry for truth. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, maybe it's because we've gotten too used to not talking about things that matter. The studio audience shifted in their seats. The energy had completely changed, and Joy wasn't backing down. Well, some of us don't want to go backward, she said, her voice sharper. And quite frankly, it's dangerous to suggest that Hollywood needs to clean up or be saved by religion. That's a slippery slope. That's when Mark's composure started to break. I'm not here to rescue anyone. I'm here to tell a story, one that I believe in, and I'm not going to apologize for that. Sitting in the corner of the panel, co-host Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to bring some levity. Let's not forget, Mark also exploded half of Boston in Patriots Day, right? I believe he can do a bit of range. The audience chuckled, temporarily, but Joy wasn't releasing. The tone turned serious. Let's discuss your history, Mark, because for one talking values, there are plenty of controversies in your early years. Violence, arrest, racism, assault. Do you honestly believe you are the greatest person to be leading the discussion on morality? The air was sucked from the room. Mark Wahlberg's face froze. This was no longer a debate. This was a personal attack. He took a deep breath and leaned forward, visibly tense. I've never shied away from my past. I've owned it. I've made amends. I've changed. But to use my mistakes as ammunition in a conversation about growth, that's low, Joy. Joy raised her eyebrows, arms crossed. I'm just asking the questions. No, Mark snapped. You're trying to discredit me because you don't like what I believe in. And with that, the discussion spilled into live TV madness. Co-hosts struggled to regain order. Whoopi Goldberg, who had been mostly quiet, finally interrupted. All right. Let's cool this down, folks. This isn't The View and the Fury. We've got to move on. But it was too late. The audience was divided, half gasping, half clapping at Mark's defiance. On social media, clips began surfacing within minutes. One fan posted, "This wasn't an interview, it was an ambush. Kudos to Mark Wahlberg for holding his ground." Another viewer tweeted, "Joy Behar crossed the line bringing up Mark's history just because she didn't agree with his faith message." And another contended, "Mark Wahlberg strutting in like a guest, strutting out like a political candidate." Wow. Mark, obviously shaken, but still, looked around the table. "This isn't a conversation," he told them. "This is the very reason people stop discussing real issues on national television. You invite someone to speak their truth and then attempt to demolish them for it." He put down his microphone, stood and growled, "You don't speak to me like that." Then he strode off the set. The producers cut quickly to a commercial. Audience members sat in stunned silence. Joy sat rigidly in her chair, lips compressed, observing Mark depart. Backstage, sources report, Mark Wahlberg paced and was visibly shaken. He allegedly informed his crew, "I came here with respect." They didn't give it back. It didn't take long for the headlines to strike. Mark Wahlberg storms off The View after heated clash with Joy Behar. Faith versus fire. Hollywood showdown erupts on live TV. Mark Wahlberg canceled. Or courageous news outlets from around the political and entertainment spectrums began weighing in. Fox News termed the moment a case of Hollywood hypocrisy exposed, while publications such as The Hollywood Reporter dwelled on the tension between redemption on a personal level and accountability in public life. But underlying the controversy is a more profound question. Can a celebrity with a mixed past find a voice for personal transformation? Or will their past forever determine them, particularly in the court of public opinion? Something was certain. The View had never witnessed anything so extraordinary before, and this was just the start. From the outside in, it looked like just another day at The View. The hosts were seated at their signature round table, coffee cups in their hands, stage lights casting a golden glow over the studio. The crowd applauded as the day's guest, Mark Wahlberg, appeared, smiling politely, dressed in a sharp jacket and jeans, hands modestly in pockets. Joy Behar welcomed him first. "Look who's here," she smirked. The Boston boy made good in Hollywood. Welcome back, Mark. Mark smiled. Happy to be here. You all look spruced up today. The mood was upbeat, friendly, controlled. For the first couple of minutes, it all went according to script. Joy posed the usual Hollywood questions. What is your new movie about? What inspired it? And Mark answered with professional ease. He explained his film sincerely, which was about faith, redemption, and transformation of oneself, a topic very much akin to his own life experience. Mark shared anecdotes about his childhood in a rough Boston neighborhood, his troubled youth, and how spirituality helped him pull away from self-destruction and into a more purpose-driven life. I'm not perfect, he said sincerely. I've done things I'm not proud of, but I've worked hard to change that path. That's what this film is about. Second chances. Co-host Sunny Hostin nodded supportively. We love stories of redemption, she said. It's great to hear men in Hollywood speak candidly about family and faith. Even Joy was seeming to go along, at least for a time. Then, however, her tone changed. Her smile wavered slightly. The rhythms of her voice tensed. That's when she leaned forward, crossed her arms, and asked the now famous question, Mark, do you really believe Hollywood needs more religion at this point? It wasn't what she said. It was the way she phrased it. Sarcasm laced in her voice, skepticism wrapped around her words, and directed squarely at the core of Wahlberg's faith. The studio fell silent. Some audience members looked at each other. The atmosphere shifted. Everyone sensed it. Mark did not reply right away. He furrowed his brow, nodded slowly, and then replied, his voice steady but firm. Absolutely. I believe we require more values, more faith, and less of the chaos that's being normalized nowadays. People are yearning for truth, for meaning. The room tensed up. Joy retorted, folding her arms. Well, not everybody desires to be preached at while watching a movie. Some of us go to the theater to escape the real world, not to be lectured. The tension released like a stretched rubber band. Mark leaned forward. His expression was still calm, but something had changed in his eyes. This was no longer a discussion. It was getting personal. And I'm not here to preach to anyone, he said, but there's something to be said for being willing to stand up for what you think is right, even if it makes other people uneasy. The studio audience responded with a collective gasp, followed by a nervous laugh. It was the sort of response normally reserved for political debate or celebrity comebacks, not religious dialogue. But this was not a normal interview anymore. The co-hosts, Sunny, Alyssa, Sarah, were visibly shifting in their seats, their eyes flying between Joy and Mark like a tennis match audience. Joy was not finished yet. You know, Mark, she started, tapping her pen against the table. Many of us remember the old you, the one who was partying, fighting, getting arrested. I'm not being judgmental, but isn't it a bit ironic to return now and pose as the moral conscience of Hollywood? The crowd made a loud gasping sound again. And that was when the interview really veered into adversarial territory. Mark leaned back in his chair. He took a pause. You could sense that he was trying to keep himself on the ground, to not react over-impulsively. But the pressure was mounting. I've never once pretended to be anyone's moral compass, he growled, voice cinching up. But I do know what it's like to stumble and rise again, to reverse your life, and I'm proud of that. You can ridicule it if you want, but I'm not going to suppress it. Joy smiled. No one's ridiculing. We're just indicating the irony. There's nothing ironic about redemption, Mark retorted. What is ironic is feigning support for people's development when it no longer suits your agenda. Boom! Gloves removed. Alyssa Farah Griffin attempted to interrupt, trying to bring a bit of levity to the situation. Okay, perhaps we all need to take a step back here. But it was apparent this was no longer simply a discussion of a movie. It was worldviews, on one side arguing in defense of faith as the means to healing, and the other wary, cynical, maybe even belligerent towards the prospect of morality in terms of religion. Joy sat back, head shaking. Mark, look, I understand your faith is significant to you, but some of us are exhausted with being lectured about being broken if we don't share the same things. That's what makes this kind of messaging feel preachy. That's not what I'm saying, Mark snapped. But maybe part of the reason this country feels so broken is because we've stopped believing in anything. Maybe it's not the faith that's the problem. Perhaps it was the absence of it. You could have heard a pin drop. The give and take had escalated from a lively repartee into something far more profound, a naked, emotional battle over purpose, identity, and values. Basic values seem to be at stake. I think the makers of this film are misguided, actually, Joy Behar retorted, never one to back down. Preaching is not your forte, Mark. And that was the breaking point. Mark Wahlberg shot her a cold, hard stare. He didn't yell, he didn't scream, but you could see the anger churning just under the surface. You invite me on your show, ask me what I believe, and then ridicule me for it, he said. I came here respectfully. I expected the same. The crowd fell silent. Producers off stage indicated to end the segment ahead of schedule. The teleprompter was left running. Live TV had absolutely gone off script. Joy gave a brief shrug. We ask hard questions here. That's what the show is all about. Asking hard questions isn't the issue, Mark replied. Disrespecting people for responding to them is. And with that, the room's temperature plummeted to sub-zero. What had started as a workaday promo circuit had become a cable news ideological face-off, a naked, visceral confrontation of two forceful personalities with fundamentally disparate opinions about life, truth, and redemption. Lippets of the exchange quickly went viral. YouTube thumbnails detonated with titles such as Mark Wahlberg shuts down Joy Behar live, The View goes nuclear over faith debate. Mark Wahlberg versus Joy Behar, Hollywood's culture war erupts. Comment sections were ablaze. One commenter wrote, Mark remained classy when confronted. Joy went too far. This was not an interview but an attack. Another added, this is why nobody trusts the media anymore. They invite their guests simply to rip them apart. Even high-profile people had something to say, with some justifying Joy's right to question ideas, some accusing her of subjecting a promo to political ambush. And that was only the start. The segment wasn't just a battle between two stars. It became a national topic, a mirror of the cultural conflict between belief, Hollywood, and individual redemption. What came next would be even more heated. It was a slow burn, but by now the fire was raging full blast. Mark Wahlberg, who was formerly calm and composed, now sat with his fists clenched light on the table. His smile was now absent, his eyes intent and piercing. Seated across from him, Joy Behar was unflappable, unwavering, pushing ahead with what many afterward characterized as a line of inquiry that strayed across the line from inquiry into taunting. Up to that point, the tense battle on The View had revolved around religion, morals, and public opinion. Then, however, Joy made a change of tack. She went off script, cutting from the selling of the film straight into Mark's history, a history Wahlberg had spent years trying to make up for. You know, Mark, Joy started, her tone chipper, but her words heavy. It's great that you found religion and turned your life around. But isn't it a little rich for someone who has your past to come in here and lecture about morality? Mark didn't respond at first, his jaw clenched. The camera recorded it, the viewers saw it, Joy, hoping for the pause to continue, pressed on. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. You were in some really violent things when you were younger. Assault, racially motivated assaults, arrests, actual harm. And now you want to be the guy lecturing Hollywood about how to act? The room in the studio went ice cold. The crowd, who had been chuckling just seconds before, fell into an uncomfortable silence. Even the co-hosts were taken aback. Sunny Hostin fidgeted in her chair. Undeaf Alyssa Farrah Griffin gave a worried look towards the producers backstage. Undeaf Sarah Haynes, usually cheerful, nibbled at her lip as if she was begging silently, please don't go there. Mark Wahlberg sat up straight. His tone, when he spoke at last, was low, even, but contained a tempest. I've made my errors, he told her. I've never denied that. I've paid the price. I've apologized. I've spent decades trying to be better, to make it right, not just with words, but with deeds. He paused and then continued, but bringing my history out in the middle of a discussion about what I stand for, just in order to discredit what I believe in, that's not journalism. That's character assassination. The audience applauded softly, just a few claps, but it echoed powerfully in the silence. But Joy wasn't done. Undefined, not yet. With a smirk, she leaned back and delivered the blow that would go viral. Well, maybe you should stick to punching people in movies and leave the preaching to the professionals. Mark Wahlberg booted off The View. Following flaming altercation with Joy Behar, the crowd gasped in unison. Others nervously giggled. Others just sat and stared in silence. And that was the last straw. Mark's demeanor shifted in an instant. His stoic facade melted into something raw, angry, betrayed. "Excuse me?" he snapped, leaning forward. "Did you actually just say that?" Joy shrugged, making light of it. "Just saying you do action scenes better than sermons." Mark's tone came up a notch, no longer censored for diplomacy. "No, what you're actually saying is that individuals like me aren't worthy to speak about values because we've erred, that we can't develop, that we must remain in silence forever. That's not progressive, Joy. That's heartless." He surveyed the table, speaking now to the whole panel. "How many times must I apologize for being the 16-year-old that I was? How many years of working for good, of healing, of faith, of family must I complete before I can move on?" There was absolute silence in the room. Joy was surprised. "Well, maybe when your past doesn't include hate crimes, we'll talk." The producers visibly panicked. One was seen motioning toward the camera operator. Another shouted off stage. The studio floor manager tried to cue the wrap-up signal. The camera briefly cut to Alyssa Farah Griffin, who looked like she'd just seen a car crash happening in slow motion. "Okay," Alyssa said, trying to intervene. "Maybe we're getting a little too far off track here." But Mark cut her off, not rudely, but with purpose. "No, let's finish this," he said. "Let's discuss how a person can transition from being broken to being whole. Let's discuss second chances. Because if individuals like you," he said, turning to Joy directly, "won't believe people can change, then what's the purpose of any of it?" Joy did not respond. Mark looked squarely at the camera, nearly speaking to the home audience. "I wasn't here to discuss spirituality, hope, or a movie that is designed to inspire people. I was not here to be dragged through the mud. I'm proud of who I am. I'm not going to let anyone shame me back into who I used to be." Then he stood up. The studio audience gasped again. A few people even started clapping, sensing the moment was nearing its climax. Mark took off his microphone, calmly, intentionally. He did not storm away, but he did not hesitate either. As he turned from the table, he glanced back once. "You do not speak to people that way," he told Joy, his voice cold but distinct. "Not if you are truly interested in the truth." And he disappeared. Live on television. The screen almost instantly faded to commercial. The host just sat there, stunned for a second, in the grip of the realization of what had occurred. It was one of the most theatric moments in history on daytime television, and within minutes, it erupted around the internet. Twitter lit it off first. Clips of Mark's last words, "You don't talk to people like that," were constantly reposted second by second. Hashtags like #WahlbergWalkOff, The View Meltdown, and #Faith vs Fury dominated trending pages within 30 minutes. Commentators from both political and entertainment spheres weighed in. Conservative voices praised Wahlberg for defending his faith and standing up to what they saw as Hollywood hypocrisy. Progressive commentators were split. Some defended Joy's right to question public figures, while others condemned her for bringing up Wahlberg's past in such a pointed way. YouTubers began uploading reaction videos almost instantly, dissecting the exchange frame by frame, analyzing body language, and speculating on whether this marked a permanent rift between Wahlberg and daytime television. According to insider sources, producers backstage were in full crisis mode. One anonymous crew member told an entertainment blog, "We've had heated moments before, but this wasn't tension. This was a genuine fracture. Joy didn't stand down. Mark didn't either. It became real, and not in the good rating sense. Later in the day, The View issued a brief official statement. Today's exchange was unscripted and passionate. We appreciate differing opinions and open dialogue, even when things get intense. Mark, meanwhile, broke his silence with a brief Instagram story. I'm not perfect, never claimed to be, but I'll always speak from the heart, even if it gets me kicked off the set. The story featured a black screen with white text. Truth over comfort, always. Polls taken by entertainment media outlets showed a deeply divided public. Supported Mark Wahlberg, saying he was disrespected and ambushed. 4% supported Joy Behar, arguing that public figures must answer for their past. 8% said both sides went too far. But no matter where individuals were on this issue, all agreed on one thing. That interview wasn't simply awkward. It was history-making. It fueled wider discussions of cancel culture, redemption, growth, and the role of media in narrating or distorting someone's story. It was the sort of moment that doesn't simply lead the headlines, it rewrites them. Following close to 20 minutes of escalating tension, personal jabs, and ideological jousting, the Mark Wahlberg-Joy Behar interview came to a head. The audience already knew uncomfortable silence, biting sarcasm, and words that walked the line between journalism and judgment. But nothing at all could have prepared them for what was about to ensue. Mark Wahlberg, who had struggled to maintain his cool in the face of increasing criticism, leaned in close to the panel. His jaw was set, his voice steady, but sharp as a razor. "You know what, Joy?" he said, glaring into her eyes. "Perhaps if more people in Hollywood ever did believe in something greater than themselves, this town would not be in the shape it is in. You want to argue with me? That's fine, but don't ridicule my faith or my path." The line struck like an earthquake. The studio fell absolutely silent. No coughs, no whispers, no applause. Just a silence so deep that even the hum of background stage equipment seemed to vanish. You could practically hear the camera lenses focusing. Joy, caught off guard, opened her mouth to reply. But before she even got to say the first word, Wahlberg stood up. "You don't speak to me like that," he said with a snap of his words and no hesitation. "I came here to promote a film, is not to be disrespected." And with that, in the middle of the day on live national television, Wahlberg leaned over, unhooked his mic from his collar, and set it carefully on the table. The panelists were stuck. The producers, standing behind the glass wall of the control room, were now gesturing wildly, waving their arms wildly to cut the segment. Someone in the earpieces of the co-hosts urgently whispered, "Wrap it, cut to commercial, now." But Mark wasn't interested. He spun around, gave a courtesy nod to co-host Sonny Hostin, who shot him a sympathetic glance, and stalked off the set without saying a word. No shouting, no door slamming, no Watergate point and wave, just cold disappointment and quiet defiance. The crowd gasped. Some stood up clapping, not knowing if to applaud or sit down. A few simply stared, mouths agape. Within seconds, the live feed was abruptly cut. A jarring transition screen appeared. "We'll be right back," but the damage had already been done. And the internet? It erupted. As the screen went black for viewers, chaos unfolded backstage. Producers, assistants, and stage managers raced around trying to assess the fallout. One staff member reportedly ran after Mark Wahlberg to try to bring him back to the set. Another tried calming Joy, who now sat stiffly in her seat, silently flipping through cue cards as if pretending none of it had happened. Multiple crew members described the energy as panic mode. It was like watching a live broadcast fall off a cliff in slow motion. One crew member told an entertainment insider, "We've had tense guests before, but this was different. This was personal and very, very real." Some of the co-hosts were said to have complained at the commercial break about whether Joy had crossed the line in her questioning. One source heard Sarah Haynes breathe, "That was too much. We lost control." When the show resumed, the tone was entirely different. Forgotten were the cheerful transitions, the smiles, the ribald banter. The tone was flat. Joy hardly spoke. The remainder of the episode played on, but the spark was lost. And the whole world watching knew They had just seen the most viral moment of daytime TV since the early 2000s. Within minutes, social media sites were full of clips, reaction, edits, and memes. The moment was documented by audience members, re-uploaded with subtitles, slowed down, zoomed in, and dubbed in foreign languages. All trended in an hour. Twitter saw X went wild with commentary. Joy went for the kill shot. Mark stalked out like a boss tool. At Culture Commentary, that wasn't an interview. That was an ambush masquerading as journalism. At Truth Matters Pod, Mark Wahlberg exercising more restraint than most would in his role. They stirred the bear. At Hollywood Unscripted, on TikTok, reaction videos dominated the FYP. Creators captured themselves reacting in real time, mouths open, hands on heads, faces from amazement to outrage. One viral reaction encapsulated the sentiment perfectly. We came for a movie promo. We departed with a masterclass in walking away from toxic energy. It wasn't long before fellow celebrities chimed in. Chris Pratt, whose own faith and sporadic controversy are well known, wrote on Instagram, "Sometimes the only way to deal with disrespect is to walk out with grace. Respect, Mark." Jamie Lee Curtis tweeted, "We invite people to be vulnerable on talk shows and then punish them for being honest. That's not the Hollywood I want to see." Prior to that, Rosie O'Donnell, a former host of The View, posted a clip of the moment with the description, "Same show, same tactics, different target." The moment was more than just a feud. It became a cultural flashpoint. From CNN to Fox News, every station reported on the eruption on The View. Some of the headlines read, "Mark Wahlberg walks off The View after tense clash over faith." Did Variety, "Wahlberg snaps it after Behar's punching people jab." TMZ, "The View crosses a line." Talk show under fire after faith debate. Daily Mail, "Mark Wahlberg's found classy exit sparks nationwide debate on redemption." The Atlantic, one piece on entertainment. "Tonight set off the moment as a conflict between cancel culture and redemption." Another on the Daily Wire referred to it as a religious litmus test masquerading as liberal entertainment. ABC issued an official statement by 6 p.m. "We appreciate lively discussion and open debate on The View. Though not all moments are perfect, we're dedicated to respectful discussion between guests and hosts alike." Behind the scenes, sources indicated that ABC executives were divided. Some believed Joy Behar's line of questioning had crossed the line. Others felt Mark overreacted. But one thing was certain. They were facing a PR firestorm on their hands. Gossip swirled that Mark's crew was reconsidering future spots on network talk shows. Some even speculated other A-listers were observing the situation and reconsidering appearing on that same View couch. That night, Wahlberg uploaded a brief video to Instagram. It wasn't professionally done. No overlays, just him, in a back patio, hoodie over his head, talking straight to the camera. "I was invited on The View to discuss a film that is important to me," he explained. "I anticipated difficult questions, but I did not anticipate being ridiculed for my beliefs or having my history hurled at me like a weapon. I never claimed to be perfect. I've tried to make amends. I'll never apologize for being truthful about it." He concluded with, "If defending what I stand for requires turning my back on disrespect, then so be it." The video was viewed 4.3 million times in 6 hours. The following day on The View, Joy Behar had no regrets. She mentioned the incident only in passing, stating, "Sometimes people take things the wrong way. That's their prerogative." Critics charged her with deflection, and her fans rallied to her right to confront public figures. But a distinct rift was evident. In a media universe where viral stunts reign supreme, controversies are staged, and conversations are PR whispered, this was authentic. This was not a meltdown. It was a matter of principle being drawn on national television. Mark Wahlberg did not rage off in anger. He walked off in principle. And whether you like him or not, it was a moment nobody could deny. Because at the center of it all wasn't just a movie or a history or a co-host. It was a question we're all grappling with. Can we really believe in second chances anymore? Or is your past always louder than your present? As the cameras cut to black and Mark Wahlberg vanished backstage, The View did not simply finish an interview, it ignited a national firestorm. In a matter of hours, mainstream media, fan sites, influencers, and regular viewers were all debating one question. Who crossed the line, Mark, Joy, or both? The buzz was not just about what was said, it was about what it meant. During an era when values, free speech, and personal development are all under scrutiny, the Wahlberg Behar spat touched every possible nerve. No longer merely celebrity gossip, this was a cultural phenomenon. In today's age of everything being online, silence is speculation, and both camps knew that. By midday, The View issued a carefully crafted public statement. We value open dialogue, and sometimes discussions can become intense. We respect Mark's privilege to step away and thank him for coming aboard. It was a textbook example of damage control, brief, even-handed, and obviously attempting to put out a wildfire. But Mark Wahlberg's reply had much more authority. On Instagram, he shared a black and white image of a peaceful chapel with this post. I believe in having respectful discussion. I don't believe in being ambushed for having convictions. I walked away from something that didn't align with the values I believe in. That's it. That brief post accumulated more than 8 million likes and 150,000 comments within 24 hours. PAL fans swarmed into the comment section. You stood your ground like a man of faith would. They attempted to shame you for maturing. Don't let them get to you. Walking away from disrespect isn't weakness, it's strength. Meanwhile, Joy Behar addressed the situation on The View the very next day, but in a way that only fueled the fire. With her usual sarcasm, she said, "We've had tough guests before, but Mark clearly wasn't in the mood for pushback." No apology, no reflection, just a jab. And that didn't go over well with a lot of viewers. On social media, Joy was charged with doubling down on condescension rather than displaying professionalism or empathy. Public reaction. A nation divided across networks, individuals took sides, and they did it loudly. These were the fans, public figures, and commentators who commended Mark for his decision to walk away from what they interpreted as a media ambush. Faith communities praised his composure and his ability to resist letting his beliefs be mocked. Mental health activists praised him for stepping out of a toxic environment. And then, veterans, working-class employees, and redemption activists indicated that his history didn't eliminate him from the running. It made his viewpoint even stronger. One of the viral tweets stated, "Mark Wahlberg never raised his voice, never insulted anyone. He stood up for himself and walked away. That is class." Even Denzel Washington, in an unexpected Instagram Live, stated, "If somebody's attempting to provoke you, just walk away." I admire what Mark did. I would have done the same. Backers of Joy Behar portrayed the incident differently. They contended that public figures can be subject to criticism, particularly when utilizing media outlets in order to advance beliefs. Others criticized Wahlberg as hypersensitive, stating, "If you can't take the heat, don't go on The View." Others praised Joy's willingness to challenge Hollywood's selective memory when it comes to past errors. One liberal podcast host added, Joy didn't attack his religion. She pressed him on why someone who had a violent history should be able to place himself as a moral compass. That's a legitimate question. But even some Joy fans criticized her tone, accusing it of being unforgiving and coming across as argumentative rather than constructive. All the major outlets spun it differently. Fox News. Mark Wahlberg walks off after left-wing host attacks his faith and redemption story. CNN. When public past meets private beliefs, The View's latest firestorm. The View's official YouTube page set record-breaking comments and dislikes on the interview post, prompting them to disable comments briefly. Even late-night shows weren't afraid to join in. Jimmy Kimmel made a joke. The only way someone leaves The View quicker is if they unknowingly mentioned Oprah's name to Whoopi. But the joke could not hide behind the true implications. This wasn't a headline. This was a reset button for public conversation. The bigger question, can Mark come back from this? Ironically, it wasn't Mark Wahlberg's past people were now examining. It was his future. Would studios view this as courage or negative publicity? Would Christian and family-loving fans rally around him more than ever? Or would he now bear a stigma of being difficult, in an industry that lives on conformity. Insiders close to Wahlberg report that he was approached with several interviews in the wake of the incident, media sit-downs with Christian outlets, Fox News, and even the Joe Rogan Experience, but they declined. "Mark's not interested in profiting on this," said one insider. "He walked away to secure his peace, not to ignite a war." But that hasn't deterred fans from insisting on accountability from The View. Already, an online petition requiring Joy Behar to make a formal apology has gained 1.2 million signatures. The View's reputation, more than a crack. The View has used a controversy, indeed it feeds on it, but this was different, and this wasn't a political back and forth. This wasn't a spontaneous celebrity gaffe. This was a visibly transformed man being chastised for holding convictions. At least, that's the way millions of viewers perceived it. And in the media age today, perception is reality. Ratings for the next episode were up, but not the reason ABC had hoped. Most viewers watched out of curiosity, waiting to see how the show would handle what had transpired. What they were given was uncomfortable sidestepping and dodging. Many were disappointed. So, what happens next? So far, there's been no indication if Mark Wahlberg is ever going to come back to The View, and most don't think it's likely. In fact, insiders now say A-list celebrities may start skipping the show entirely, particularly if they don't like how their values or stories might be manipulated for ratings. But the real message isn't about one actor and one talk show host. It's about something more, something greater. This whole incident drew back the curtain on the state of public discourse today. Can one talk about personal growth without being shamed for past behavior? Undefined, can two individuals disagree without attempting to discredit each other? Are we listening or waiting to pounce? Because regardless of which side people were on, one thing remained true. Everyone identified with that moment, either in the guest who stormed out or the host who refused to give. Just whether you view it as a valiant departure or a lost chance for conversation, Mark Wahlberg walking off The View has now cemented its place as an iconic moment of 2025. It's a masterclass on how conviction can conflict with cynicism and what occurs when personal change collides with public doubt. Only time will reveal how the dust settles. But one thing's certain, this moment will go down in daytime TV history. And the question we're all still asking, will Mark Wahlberg ever go back to The View? Or has this blaze of confrontation left a wound too deep to close?